Hey, this is Madalyn Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio.
If you've been on Twitter for a while, you may remember there was this thing called Super Follows last year, where it was kind of like Patreon. You could actually set up your profile to have subscribers, and people pay you a monthly fee, and you give them extra content, exclusive things. And we heard that Spaces, private Spaces, was part of this. But the problem was a lot of people could not sign up for this because they had a lot of requirements. And I think it was US only as well to be able to offer it. And I remember I signed up, but I wasn't sure if I was going to actually use it. But I did sign up, got approved, but I never flipped the switch and turned it on, Suze. Because I was really debating like, well, I think I'm going to just reactivate my Patreon, and I think I'd rather go. There's more flexibility. But there's something about that ability to have private Spaces that's just been nagging me, right? I should have played with this sooner, but then we get this announcement that Super Follows has been renamed. It's now called Subscriptions. And it clearly states that subscriber-only Spaces is one of the nice perks that you can offer. What were your thoughts when you were reading about this, Suze?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a closed box for us over here in the UK. As you've said, it kind of always was. I was one of those people that sort of put my hand up and said, yes, please, I'd like this, but then was just popped on the waiting list and just had that sort of hold icon and then never heard any more about it when it was Super Follows. With subscriptions, similarly, at the moment, it's not available to us over here. But, we always discuss the fact that private Spaces would give another element to this feature. We had a tiny little taster of it with community Spaces. When the communities are up and running, you can run a space that is just for people that are within that community. I did that once or twice with our All Things Audio community, and it was really fun. It was great to kind of see who would drop in and who was around at that time. I like it. I think from my point of view, I see it as Elon's very up for this subscriptions thing, it would appear. Clearly, ultimately, he can make some money out of it. So it's going to be something that he's going to keep a close eye on. And he's included Spaces in it. I'm still not 100% solid on what's going to happen with Spaces in the future. But including it within this subscriptions model does show that, it is being discussed and talked about, and they're trying to work out what to do with it. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really excited about this, and it really encouraged me to go ahead and follow through with signing up and finishing the process. Sadly, though, I'm still waiting. I went through the process of it has to connect with Stripe. You have to have a Stripe account, which I already did have. And I thought, I'll get immediate access to be able to turn this on and start using it because I want to play around with the private Spaces. I think that's just a really cool feature, even though you can provide extra content like really exclusive tweets. You could do a lot of behind the scenes stuff. There's so much you could do with this, I think. So I go through this process, and if you're looking in the Nest or if you're listening to the podcast version, we have our show notes. There's this additional tweet I'm throwing in. As I was going through the process, I noticed there was a change when you actually select the dollar amount you want to charge for your monthly subscribers. And this first tweet from Matt Navarra shows the old way. And the old way, when it was Super Follows, was you had these choices of you could charge $2.99 a month, $4.99, or $9.99. Well, when I went through it, it wasn't like that. So I guess with this change from Super Follows to subscriptions, they updated it where you can actually pick a dollar amount that's a whole dollar amount. And you could start with $1 all the way up to over $100. But the thing you have to keep in mind is you can only set this one time, and whatever dollar amount you choose, you cannot go back and change. And I was thinking long and hard, what should I charge? And I came up with $6. I'm still waiting. It hasn't gone completely through, but I came up with $6 because one of the other interesting things that I'm going to show on a tweet in a minute here is that and this is where it gets a little tricky. If somebody that wants to subscribe, if you're approved and you set this up, you're ready to go. If somebody subscribes through the web browser, you get the full amount and it's processing through Stripe. The payment is processing through Stripe. If they do it on their iPhone app or their Android app, 30% is going to go to Apple if it's iOS and Google if it's Android. We've heard from, I'm going to find the tweet here to add it in, but Elon has said that he is not taking, for 12 months, he is not going to take any money through Twitter. So that's really interesting. But I was trying to think, well, not everybody's going to sign up through the web. You're going to always get the people that are trying to keep it easy. They're going to do it on their phone. And that 30% is going to come out. So since we know most people are going to go that route, what's the amount you're actually getting? If you're charging $6, you're not getting $6. So I thought, well, knowing that a third is coming out and that's how most people are going to do it, that's the dollar amount I came up with $6. We shall see, because now I see people have gotten approved and they're doing it for like $5. And I don't know. What do you think, Suze? I feel like some of these people that already have it, they're establishing the amount, and it's almost like a standard is being set.
Yeah, and I mean, what Elon will eventually take is an unknown as well. So to try and set a price at the moment with an unknown percentage that's going to be taken at some point in the future, once this all gets underway, is really difficult to do. Yeah, I mean, we had ticketed spaces for a while. Some people on beta had ticketed spaces for a while, and it really didn't kind of take off as a monetized version of the feature. Whether or not because it's packaged up as part of a wider subscriptions feature, it is used more. I'm not sure. Is the rest, is it that the subscriptions package itself is, offers enough stuff? And if people haven't already investigated spaces, are they likely to investigate that further? Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting move. I wonder what it then does to the wider Spaces ecosystem. Do they start to look at, well, how many people are joining spaces that are subscriber only spaces that we're going to make some money out of, and how many people are joining the free version, if you like? And if eventually it just becomes an exclusive feature, which we have discussed before, and put spaces kind of behind that paywall, which I think would be a terrible shame, but is a possibility once they've got that offering within the subscriptions. I mean, the other thing to go back and mention is that, you said about the super follows and the criteria that you had to have to be able to apply for that. I wrote about this in the Stop, Rewind, Play Substack that I've started up last week. Previously, you needed 1,000 followers and you needed to have hosted at least 3 spaces in the previous 30 days to get access. And that was quite a high bar for many people. The hosting of the spaces at that point, I guess, was more the high bar than the followers. This time round with subscriptions, the criteria is just a lot. They're asking you to have 10,000 active followers. I mean, how do they define an active follower as it is? I mean, I'm assuming they mean, not 10,000 bots, fair enough. But that's a lot. Like, I haven't got that, and I've got no hope of getting that in the next 5 years, 10 years. We've been doing this space now. We were only saying the other day, this week, I think it was the 15th of April, 2021, we started the All Things Audio space. We've been doing this regularly for 2 years. Yet I wouldn't have the option to even join on to subscriptions and be able to monetize any of it. So yeah, it's a tricky one.
It is, but there is a little bit of confusion, though, when it comes to these parameters, because in that first tweet we had put up from Matt Navarra, it says, have at least 500 followers. And then further down in the bullet points, it says, have at least 10,000 active followers. So which is it? And I've seen other people confused by that wording, because it'll say, have at least 500, which I think is more doable for people. 10,000 is a hefty number. So which is it actually? It remains to be seen.
I was looking in the help center. So that 10,000 figure is what they've got on the Twitter's creator monetization standards. And And this is like about 20 bullet points of various things, have posted at least 25 tweets in the past 30 days, connect a verified Stripe account, all these different things, and maintain 10,000 active followers or more. And that's an additional criteria specifically for subscriptions. So, they're obviously looking for certain people. I guess maybe they think those people that have got the higher number of followers are more likely to bring in more money by virtue of the fact that more people will join their spaces. Maybe that's the point of it. It'll all come down to dollars and pounds, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And the other thing to keep in mind, you have to be a creator that's based in either the US, Japan, Canada, Australia, or New Zealand to be able to turn this on right now. So I thought it was interesting that they limit, and these are the same countries that had Twitter Blue first.
Are they?
So I thought that was quite interesting how and why that is happening. And I've yet to hear any explanation. I imagine more countries.
They must have a criteria of like territories then, mustn't they? They must have an idea that these are the places that are going to take it up.
Well, you'd have to be able to take payments through the web. So if somebody's doing it through the browser, that twitter.com, and they're signing up from a web page, it's not going to go through Apple or Google, right? It's not going to be on a mobile device. So they're using Stripe, and I don't know. Stripe probably is not available in every country, I would imagine. So they're probably having to figure out payment systems for different countries that don't offer that as an option. And maybe that's going to take some time. Who knows? I have not seen any thorough explanations. But it is nice to know they're offering this. They're trying to give us a way as creators to monetize our content, but also just keep in mind, you'd have to have a lot of subscribers to make any real money out of this. Even Elon is only charging $5. I've seen a lot of his his super fans that are already interesting how they all got access right away. I've been waiting since last week, but I noticed his buddies have all got it immediately. And they're all charging like $5. I see like $5 or $6. So it'll be interesting to see if this is something people really want and they're going to sign up for. And are they going, then they got to go promote it and let people know. You can't just build it and think people are going to show up. It doesn't work like that anymore. You don't just build it and they come. You got to let people know about it. So it's interesting. I just love that we could have subscriber-only spaces. I think that's a huge plus in all of this.
And it certainly looks like Elon's already got plans to leverage it himself as well with this next tweet. He's saying once every few weeks, I'll do an Ask Me Anything for subscribers only, and sometimes a discussion on spaces. So, he's suggesting, that he'll keep some content back for those subscribers. But, he might deign to join us right here on the normal spaces every so often.
Well, and I think that's really smart of him because as a creator, that's what you want to do. You want to utilize this as a way to give exclusive content, exclusive information. So for him to sit here and say, well, I'm going to be doing Ask Me Anythings just for subscribers, and there'll be a discussion on spaces from time to time. I think that's super smart. And, I think he's trying to lead by example and showing people, here's a way you could use this yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, when you think about how many people have been joining his spaces as well, again, cha-ching.
Exactly. It's a little side hustle for him to bring in more money into Twitter, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Pocket money.
It'll be interesting to see how many subscribers he gets. Now, here was something interesting from Legion, and I thought this was wild. Captions came back to Twitter Spaces, but really for like just a minute. Because it seems like as soon as like it was showing back up and Legion had taken a screenshot, all of a sudden, and I was like, oh, it's back. And I went looking for it and I couldn't find it. And then he comes back with, and this was like same day, he comes back with a tweet saying, oh, I can't reproduce it anymore myself. So yeah, it came and went. So I thought that was odd.
A blink and you miss it moment, I think. I don't know. I mean, could they have rolled something back? They were trying to do something with spaces and they rolled it back a bit. Don't know.
It's like, what were they doing? What were they thinking? Like, a lot of us were really upset that they took away captions. I think captions it was such an important feature. It was a feature that was part of spaces from the very beginning. And I think it's important to have these accessibility features because there's so many people that need something like that. We don't think about it when we're not hearing impaired, right? I mean, we all take this for granted, but there are a lot of people out there that want to be able to read those captions because they're hearing impaired, or they might just be in a noisy environment and they're relying on those captions. And so it was really upsetting they took it away. But when we were hearing that it was back, I mean, I was just like beside myself, like, oh, thank God Elon came to his senses. And I was like, so as soon as I went and tried it, I'm like, well, I don't see it. So I tweeted Legion and I mentioned that, I looked for it. It's not showing up on my iOS. And then that's when he came back and said, yeah, it's not working anymore. Well, I had to share this tweet from Andrew at Spaces Dashboard. Was so excited to know that if you're not linking, it's such a great idea. If you're not linking your Twitter Spaces from your Instagram, you're really missing out on opportunities to promote. Like us, we're sitting here hosting very regularly, and many of us are having to use one of those link services like Linktree. I've been using a different one that was called BioLink, where you can have the multiple links, and was using that to be able to promote all things audio in addition to other things that I'm doing. And he came up with this great idea. It's like, well, in case you haven't heard, you can now link to you can have up to 5 links in your Instagram bio, in your profile. So use that opportunity. And he even takes a step further. He said you can link to your upcoming spaces or your past recordings or even something you're doing live. And it just really got my wheels spinning. What was your thought on that, Suze? Because I'm like, wow, sometimes you just need somebody to point something out that it's probably kind of obvious, but I just wasn't thinking about that. I heard about this new link thing. I was excited, but I just didn't really think to do that.
Yeah, it had passed me by that Instagram had allowed you to add those 5 links. So I was grateful for the tweet because it pointed me in the direction of the fact that that's happened. And I think it's a great idea to link past spaces and upcoming events. Anywhere where you can be promoting what you're doing has got to be a good thing. And as you've said, just 5 minutes ago, just because you're doing something doesn't mean people are all going to flock to join in and to listen and to take part. You really do need to work on thinking about where the audience is and how you can let people know that they can join you and listen. So, yeah, I use a Linktree on mine at the moment because we only had that one link in bio. So my Linktree has got kind of links to Twitter, which I think says something about spaces on a Wednesday. And then I've also got a link to our podcast. But I mean, potentially if it's integrated and actually native to the platform, perhaps that's, a more streamlined way of doing things. So yeah, I'll certainly be looking into it and seeing whether or not there are different things that I should be adding or things I should be removing from the Linktree or the Linktree altogether maybe. So yeah.
Yeah, I went and updated mine today, and it's actually very, very easy to do. I have a link to an article from Mashable that actually walks you through. I couldn't believe how simple it was, Suze. You literally just go into the edit profile. It has to be on mobile. You can't do it on desktop. I don't know why, but only from mobile. You go to edit profile, go to where to links is at, and you go in there and you add these external links, and you can put a name for each one. Very simple to do. And you can even reorder them. So you don't have to worry about having it in the perfect order. You can tap on the little on the side. I think it was the 3 dots or something like that. I don't have it open in front of me right now, but it was very, very easy to do. So I definitely encourage our listeners, if you use Instagram at all, to go in and play around with this, because you could add more. And what I thought was interesting, Suze, is that you don't have to worry about everything being buried. Of course, all 5 or how up to 5 don't show up all together. It's going to show your first one, but it'll let you know that there are others right on the bio. And I think that's super smart because, with Linktree, while Linktree is great and all the similar sites, you don't know what you're going to see till you click on it. You don't know how many links are in there. You don't know what all is in there. But actually with this, it gives you that heads up, how many links you're going to see. I'm going to open up my Instagram real quick so I can read off what this was like. I was impressed. So I made my first one, MadalynScholar.com, my .com for my business. And I think in the way I did this was really smart, because when you're on my bio, it says MadalynSklar.com and 3 other. So then you tap on that and then you got the choices and you can put a name next to each link. So for my website, it says my website, MadalynSklar.com. Then I have my weekly spaces with the link to Spaces dashboard. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew, love your site. And then I have All Things Audio Podcast with the link that goes directly to our website for the All Things Audio Podcast. And then I have a link that goes directly to my weekly Twitter tips articles in my blog. And I just thought I'd do it as an experiment. And so far, I'm really pleased with it. And now I don't have to use my Linktree knockoff, the whatever it was called, bio something. Are you going to try this, Suze, or are you just going to stick? Because look, I'm not knocking Linktree at all. There was actually an article I just posted in the Nest from Paul. Thank you, Paul, for sharing this about this big announcement. It's an article from Wired saying, did Instagram just kill Linktree?
It kind of feels like it's treading on its toes, certainly. I quite like my Linktree, and I like the fact that when I log in, I get analytics so I can tell, whether or not that's actually generated any traffic for me from wherever to wherever. So I don't know that I'm going to give up the Linktree quite yet. I don't know what kind of stats or analytics you might get natively from Instagram, but I would be prepared to guess that initially it's not going to be that much. But I like to see how many people have clicked, is the top one that I've put on Linktree getting more hits because it's at the top than the ones that are further down, all that kind of thing. And I will go in and shuffle them around every so often. And, sometimes if I'm, I don't know, I go to different conferences or different events or whatever, and if I'm sort of tailoring what I'm doing and where I want people that I meet to go and I'm putting on Instagram, then I will change the Linktree around so that people can find, say, the Substack first or the podcast first, dependent on, whether I'm in a corporate setting or a podcast industry meet or whatever. So, I do like my Linktree. I think it will take me quite a lot to move from it.
Well, I think that's great. I'd say Linktree should stay as is, let people continue using it. Hopefully they're not going to come up with some way to shut it down like Elon likes to do. When he doesn't like something, Substack, let's not let those links go through.
Oh, don't even start me on that.
So ridiculous. I mean, what the heck? It's like every day there's something new he doesn't like, so he just let's just turn it off.
I feel like a naughty child, because ever since the Substack thing, and I literally started my Substack about 3 weeks before that whole debacle, which was quite frustrating and annoying. But ever since that, I will be you can see now, along with all the other things that you can see underneath your tweet, you can now see how far the reach has gone for each tweet. I'm sometimes lucky for that to say 20 now at the moment. And I feel like I'm being told off because every so often I'm posting a Substack link.
Wow. Maybe it's part of the new algorithm where you get downranked for doing that. That's not cool.
I think so. I think that's what I might be seeing. Not good at all. Right, we've got a couple of things to mention and then we are going to open up the mic. So I'd love to have a conversation with anyone about the subscriptions. What do we think about this whole new paying for closed spaces? Would love to chat about that. Anything around, how we're promoting spaces, whether or not we're going to use the new links over on Instagram. But our next very short bit of news in brief is about Clubhouse. Sajad posted a screenshot showing a new bottom navigation bar over on Clubhouse, which does look like quite a stripped down version. We've got the searches, we've got the houses, and we've got the kind of Clubhouse hand for the clubs. I think this kind of smacks of them trying to narrow down what's going on at Clubhouse. We've spoken in recent weeks about the fact that Clubhouse has been through major change. They've been changing over to this kind of 2.0 version. We've got, the various different things that are happening with clubs being turned into houses and the merging of that happening. And in the process of doing that, the app itself has been kind of all over the place and a little bit chaotic when you go in there. So I think perhaps this is a first attempt at kind of simplifying what we see when we go into the app and helping us to navigate about a little bit, particularly if we're someone that doesn't necessarily go in there, day in, day out. For anyone that hasn't been on there for a few months and then opens it up, it was starting to get a little bit kind of overwhelming and not quite sure what was going on over there. But potentially this is their first step towards kind of simplifying what we're going to see when we go into the app, which will be a good thing. It would be nice to feel that it's a little bit more intuitive over there. Certainly, I've found it a little bit scary in recent months. I heard this week, in fact, it was Paul, who's in the space, actually said that he joined a room this week. It's the first time I've ever heard of this happening, but joined a room thinking he was joining a live conversation over on Clubhouse. Got about 5 minutes in and then heard a voiceover promoting the full stream, which was available for purchase. And basically, this was a pre-recorded play out that was just promoting the fact that you could buy the full stream somewhere else. So I'd be really interested to hear if anybody else in the space has come across that as a phenomenon. It's certainly not something that I'd heard of before, and it seems a little bit cheeky and maybe a little bit clever, but a little bit cheeky. That's something that has been discovered over on Clubhouse as well. Last piece of news here is actually about Spotify. This happened last week just after our space had finished, but there's a tweet here from Matt Navarra speaking about Spotify rolling out the broadcast to podcast technology that allows radio shows to convert more easily into podcasts. This is a really, really interesting one. It is an automation tool that Spotify bought a year or so ago that they have pulled into the Megaphone platform. And what it allows publishers to do is to go through a kind of one-time setup process that allows them to automatically create new podcast episodes from their previously broadcasted content. So, certainly, when I was working regularly at the radio station, we would take various things that we packaged up and put out on the radio, and someone would take that and manually kind of convert it into a podcast, add an intro and an outro, and manually add in any ad points, any of that kind of thing. Well, apparently this platform does all of that for the broadcaster in one fell swoop, and they don't have to do very much with it. So it's being kind of mooted as a new revenue stream for broadcasters. It adds in ad markers for them, all that kind of thing. And interesting that it's Spotify that is that's doing that right now for the industry, really. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Thanks for sharing that.
I was interested in it just because, Spotify, I'm still not quite sure where are they going to land. Like, they seem to have a lot of fingers in a lot of pies and doing a lot of things, and then very happy to pull things, as we've seen with Spotify Live recently. So interesting that, they pull Spotify Live. Now it's all about, they're in the news the following week about broadcast to podcast, and it's all about automation and creating new podcasts for these broadcast publishers. And incredible as they roll through.
And we got George here with us.
Hi, George.
Hello. I have a bunch of questions about subscriptions. Hope I remember them. I just signed up through the monetize flag. It made me do two-factor authentication and all that, but it put me through the application. It asked me, what are your categories and what are you going to use it for and all that stuff. But it never did ask me for the price, that I want to charge. I have a bunch of questions related to that.
Well, that's interesting. It should have walked you through that.
It would let me know when I had it by email. But see.
Oh, you know what, George? Okay. Let's back up for a minute. I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but I think it's a two-step process. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I signed up last year. So it took a long time to get approval, but first you have to actually get approved. That's the first hurdle. And that's before you get to choose a dollar amount. You don't get to do much. You just have to, because they have to make sure you pass the test, that you fit the criteria for this. Then you're going to get a notification, and it'll be in monetization. And you should get a notification in your notifications as well when you do get accepted. And I remember it took a long time because I signed up back when it was a brand new thing with super follows, just to play around with it. And I just got really frustrated because months and months go by, nothing. And then one day out of the blue last year, I get notified that I've been approved. I'm like, okay, but I didn't do it. I just let it sit. Well, because I'm already, so I think it's a two-step process, George. What happens if you go back into monetization now? And for our listeners on desktop, you just go on your sidebar navigation, or you can do it on mobile as well. Go to professional tools and you'll see monetization in there. Now, if you're in one of the countries that doesn't have this available yet, then you probably won't even see it pop up. But under monetization is where you'll see subscription.
It says your application has been submitted.
Okay. See, I see. Mine says application accepted. So I think it sounds like it's a two-part process. You're pending. So what's going to happen, George, is eventually you're going to get approved. It'll say, because mine says application accepted, build your subscription. So that's when I went in, I chose the dollar amount. You fill in what your description is, you fill out what your perks are, and then you connect your Stripe account. Then I got a pop-up that says, okay, you're all set. And it says, we've confirmed your Stripe account. Subscriptions on your account will go live shortly. We'll send you a notification as soon as it's live. You can also visit your profile to see if subscriptions are enabled. Now, I've had this little pop-up since last week. It was when the whole thing was announced with Elon. I saw all of his friends get it immediately. I'm still waiting. So I did reach out to one of the few Twitter employees today and sent them the screenshot like, okay, I'm still waiting, because I would like to go ahead and try it. But I think that's what it is, George. I think you got to first get approved, and then you can go back in, put your dollar amount, just pick it carefully. I know you and I talked about this a little bit last week, but the fine print says you cannot change it once you select it.
If I want to do some special spaces, and if I want my friend Madalyn Sklar to join, I'm not going to charge her to join. I want to be able to give her a free pass. So how do I do that? All these questions remain.
You're right in the sense that, say, Madalyn, you got the super follows and you were going to run a space, a subscribers only space. I'm assuming your co-host, if you wanted to have a co-host, which we've spoken numerous times about how many moving parts there are in a space and how useful it is to be able to co-host with someone, is going to have to be a subscriber as well. So yeah, I'm interested in how that mechanic might work.
It's possible that they'll have a way to add somebody and they don't have to be a subscriber. I remember here's the thing, back in the olden days of Facebook, when Facebook groups were new and it was and you had it set for private. I used to, back in my online music community I was really big with bringing on industry experts for live Q&As. And when we had the new Facebook groups, I would host chats in there. But I'd have to manually add them as a member to that private group. It wouldn't there was no way to just make it so that I could allow them to come in, do this, and leave. And then eventually they came up with ways where you could do stuff like that. So where it becomes more of an afterthought. I don't know yet. We don't know, since none of us have access to it, if we would be able to have someone come speak in your private space without them being, forcing them to be a member. It remains to be seen. Unless somebody here does have it turned on, they're using it, they've tried it, request the mic, because we definitely want to hear from you. But George, is so brand new. I've seen so few people actually have it on right now. So there's just a lot of questions. That's why I thought I would get it right away, since I already was approved way back when. And I have a Stripe account. I connected it. It said it connected. Now I'm just waiting for somebody manually at Twitter to turn on the switch. So I'm having to wait. But believe me, once it gets turned on, I will play with it, and I will definitely report. Hopefully next week when we're back here, I will already have had it and played with it and be able to give you all the details.
I can't wait to give you my $6.
Morgan, thank you for being so patient. Welcome to the space.
Hi, Morgan.
Hi, no worries. There's another kind of broader question, which I think is maybe more interesting when you're thinking about a community version of this than a single account, which is how introducing things affects behavior on a platform. So one of the examples which I had some experience of recently was affiliate link marketing. Okay. And this is let's say you have an affiliate link, and if people can persuade other people to subscribe to you, they'd get a little kickback. And do you want to encourage that or not? So you might think that's a great way of doing marketing for a certain thing, but then you get a platform that's filled with people who the only reason they're promoting a thing is because they're going to get $5 to put towards their coffee bill, not because they think it's good or anything like that. They just think it's sellable. So that can create all sorts of noise on a platform too. So I think you have to be really careful about what kinds of marketing incentives you introduce. I know it's a much broader conversation, but it's a really
Yes.
interesting one.
Yes. I
The
agree.
community,
It would be great to allow people to affiliate so they could say to their followers, hey, you have to subscribe to this guy's subscription because here's what I learned in his private class.
right?
I
Right.
mean, there's nothing better than word of mouth. I wrote the book on it. So,
Yeah, you can
I
imagine.
want to use word of mouth with that. Sure.
Yeah, you can imagine ways that this would work for.
Sure.
You've bought a ticket to this. If you can get 5 of your friends to do that too, you get your ticket for free. Okay,
Exactly.
that's an
Yep.
incentive.
Yep.
Um,
That's another one they should offer. What about one-shot tickets for the subscribers?
yeah,
Also,
but all of this is really interesting because we're just, I think, beginning to see this moment. Platforms themselves have shifted to subscription as a component of what they do, a small part of
Yes.
their revenue. So the Twitter Blue, right, and other platforms too. And then also, it's not a new thing, but beginning to move towards subscriptions as a way to support the creators themselves or the communities themselves too. And how we think through the dynamics of that, both as a creator, like what do we do to actually take this seriously? So these are like things we're going to have to think about over the next year or so. One of the things that I wanted to mention is we know from last year under the old regime that communities were going to be the project for this. So we know from Simon that spaces were added to communities just before Elon's takeover, basically. And it was stopped dead in its tracks. But if it had continued, they wanted to knit all this together by introducing subscription-only communities, which in some ways gets around to this question about, look, how do I get a guest speaker in without paying and that sort of thing, is that the subscription would be to the community and then members of that community, however that would happen. So it's another model of doing it. And it's interesting to me that probably it's, makes sense on Twitter, but to Elon's doesn't seem to want to go ahead with communities, sees Twitter lists as the way to group people. So that's kind of a quasi community. We'll see how that goes, but that seems to be what he wants to do. And has chosen to go with a subscription model that's based around individual accounts. So you're not going to be a part of a group with another so much, although you still are, because these are all people who are interested in that one account. But it really is driven by one person. And that does make sense. And there's a clear use case for that. So maybe it's not a bad place to start. But I just wanted to raise that as an interesting kind of contrast to the community model.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And also the community model you outlined there reminds me very much of what's happening over on Clubhouse, where, they're gathering those membership fees or whatever and then voting on the pot and all of that. That sounds very familiar.
Yeah, that's obviously in the back of my mind. And both of these models are viable. They do different things. So it's really interesting time to see these experiments in these models. And we haven't really seen the subscription spaces taken that, I suppose, seriously until this momentum now, and ticketed spaces that we know were shut down. So what I'd love to see is not just like you're subscribing for my maybe long form tweets or my behind the scenes. Oh, and maybe I'll do a space once a month for you to talk to. I would love to see some people get really serious about you're subscribing for the space, and on Twitter. So that making that move of saying, sure, there's some writing. I do tweets as well, but I'm a social audio creator. That's why you're subscribing.
Yeah, making it more of an audio first offering than not. That would be very interesting. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Though, as we've said, ticketed spaces kind of didn't really take off at all. I mean, maybe it didn't take off because not enough people had access to it, I guess, thinking back. But is it that creators weren't sure what to do with it? Was it that people weren't sure that they wanted to give up their money? What were they going to hear? What was going to happen? All of those kind of things. There's still kind of hoops and boundaries to kind of get through, I think.
My take on that is that they did not market them. They just announced tickets and prices, and none of them, absolutely none that I could find, actually did really, really good promotional tweets on exactly what you're going to get. So they didn't market it, and of course it went bust.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point. Hi, Paul. Welcome to the space.
Thank you. Always a good one. Good here. Just on that last point, I don't think those points are the biggest ones about marketing and that sort of thing. Because you can choose to do that. You can push notifications, that thing. I think Twitter's biggest problem has been for a number of years now is that people do not trust it. They have real significant brand affinity, brand loyalty, and that's the thing, issues with it. So much so they will not put a credit card in. And I think those that have done it for the Twitter Blue stuff have done it for the wrong reasons, and that's further degrading that issue at the moment. And so I think I don't think it's a death spiral per se. I keep hearing that, but I think it's got some real issues to work on before people start paying for spaces. I think that feature is going to be dead on arrival. Sorry to say. But I did want to say it was a rough day that I spent in Clubhouse the other week. I flicked open the app. I'd been there many times, thought I knew what I was doing and that thing. And I was like, it didn't say like, hey, Paul, you haven't been back in a while. We've launched some new features. How about checking out this? Watch this video, do anything. None of that. It was just like, we're still here. And the spaces, sorry, not the spaces, the rooms that were there and the things that were going on, it was like Christian evangelicalism, some very random person just playing music, not saying anything. It was just like a real melange. And I follow followed things like technology, startups and that. Just absolute diatribe of rubbish, the whole thing. And I popped in and out all day and that sort of thing. And then I found that one space and I went, this is the most I've listened to something and it's a recording. So I just thought it was funny. That's why I told you. But it was the weirdest experience I've had in a long time.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can feel that. I think when you come on and you're not part of, like, most of the people that you followed back in the day have churned, and you're just left with the random stuff in the hallway. It's a really rough experience. And it's like, I want to say, Paul, like, send me a message and I'll take you around the nice parts of town.
Oh, let's do it.
But, I'd love to do that, but it's also, I shouldn't have to say that. It should be that you come back and you do get that little explanation and it's sort of obvious to you how to use it. And it says, hey, can I check in on what your interests are? And then it says, look, okay, based on some other people who have been active for a while, these are some great things you should check out. So they need really to work on that. But yeah, if you want to go to a nice, like a wine bar where the music is not the main thing, we could try and do that.
Yeah, and non-pre-recorded, that'd be great as well.
Right.
I mean, Morgan, is that kind of a thing that's happening over there with pre-recorded stuff? I mean, I've not come across that here on Twitter.
No, not really. There is a famous guy called, I think he's called Darude Global or something, who just has a room. You'll find it at the very bottom of like 100 rooms usually, and he is just playing recorded stuff on a loop, right? And somebody's going to do it, and it's a bit of a joke. Right? And every now and again we send each other screenshots of this, and it's still going.
I mean, it's a legitimate thing to do, right? If you've got all this content and you can automatically play it out somewhere and it's not going to cost you, much money or anything like that, but hey, it might get you a subscriber to a newsletter or something like that. It's got to be worth it, right? For some people who are out there.
Clearly it's worth it for this person because I think they've been doing it for 2 years. So, you could say, well, I'm surprised more people don't do it, but
yeah, I think once Paul told me about it, I was like, yeah, why haven't we had more people doing that? I mean,
it's not something I would have ever thought to have done, really.
Yeah, well,
all things audio all the time.
Yeah, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
All right, Suze, we have a new idea.
Yeah, we do.
We do have 2 years of content. So.
We do. We'll just set it. You'll just start playing it and see how far we get and just put it on a loop. Oh, Tristan, hello. It's good to see you in the space. Not seen you here for a while. How are you?
We were all chatting meta over on Clubhouse before, and then we went, oh, look at the time. We'll all pop over here. I was wondering whether like Evan Carmichael, is it Carmichael? Is that his surname? He does a lot of recorded rooms. I've never listened to them long enough to see whether there was upsell, but he I don't think he's ever really on the app. He'll just have some other people on stage, and it's just a sort of listen party, playing in other speakers or his interviews and things. So I think people do it, but yeah, why not upsell? I think we're always speaking about this in different spaces, on here and in other spaces, of that people shouldn't rely on just the features that the app has. I mean, the best thing is you building the community over what you can do and what you can make possible. It doesn't have to be a button that's directly in front of you to make the thing work. Just treat it as a room. I guess that's what I've just been trying to do for a while now, or talk about is it's more like a meetup space. It's more like a room in a church hall or something. Don't treat it as a like a stage performance where you only can use a mic if the mic's on stage, sort of thing, or the sound effects or anything else. Yeah, make your own way.
Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.